Hello viewers, and welcome back to Comic Therapy. My name's Clayton, and sadly, this episode's going to be a little bit different. Other than talking about a specific comic book character or story, I'll be looking over the history of Stan Lee in light of his recent passing. Normally, I try to bounce between DC and Marvel themed episodes evenly, and this would be the rotation time for a DC character, but as I'm sure we all know, Stan Lee is one of, if not the biggest names in the comic industry. His role in getting comics to where they are today was monumental, and it's only appropriate that we take some time and look back at everything he's done and appreciate his work. Also, while there really was no one else like Stan Lee in the public eye, the work he did was not done alone. Therefore, I will also be talking about those he worked with throughout his life so we can fully appreciate them and their work as well. Stan Lee, born Stanley Martin Lieber on December 28, 1922, hoped to become a great American novel author, and got his first job in comics in 1939 at the then Timely Comics, which would later become Marvel Comics in the 60s. Can you believe that? Stan Lee already had a job in comics at 17 years old. I'm 22 and all I have is this show talking about comic books. That's just a joke, viewers. I love you. I love doing this show, and I would never leave you. Well, actually, I will leave you when I graduate, but let's not think about that. Now, Stan Lee's job at first was nothing extraordinary. He didn't create the Hulk on day one. His duties were mainly making sure artists had enough ink, he erased pencil lines, and every now and then he would proofread pages. The first comic Stan Lee made his debut in was Captain America Comics number 3. This is where he first used his pen name, Stan Lee. He did this because he was embarrassed for working on these comics, and he didn't want to be associated with them if he would later become a full-time novel author. Jumping a bit later in Stan Lee's career, it's time we look at some of our favorite characters that would not exist without him. Stan Lee co-created many characters along with the famous comic artist Jack Kirby. Some of their biggest works were the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and the Incredible Hulk. He's also to thank for his work on creating and writing for the Galactus and Silver Surfer, Doctor Doom, the Inhumans, and Black Panther. Kirby, however, would later leave Marvel and work for DC because he was being treated unfairly and not given equal credit or creator rights. One of Stan Lee's biggest assignments was to come up with a team of superheroes that would compete with the great success DC was having with their newly created Justice League. DC's heroes were all seen as otherworldly and had powers beyond belief. Stan Lee wanted to create a team of real people with flaws and struggles in life, but also still use their gifts to fight for humanity and justice. Lee's first creation was the Fantastic Four, which did amazing in sales, and like I said earlier, led to the later creations partnering with Jack Kirby like Thor, Iron Man, Daredevil, and the X-Men. Stan Lee then later teamed up with Steve Ditko and created Doctor Strange and my favorite, Spider-Man, whose first appearance was in Amazing Fantasy 15. Steve Ditko, who also died earlier this year in June, was an artist most well known for his creating in Spider-Man. He came up with the suit design and the wrist web gimmick. He is also to thank for some of the best Spider-Man villains, including Dr. Octopus, Electro, the Sandman, the Lizard, and Green Goblin. Ditko also revamped the DC character Blue Beetle, another one of my favorites, after leaving Marvel and transferring to DC Comics. Later in Stan Lee's career, he became a main figurehead for the Marvel Comics and was in charge of more of the business side than writing. He would make many appearances in comic conventions as well as start to pop up in TV shows and video games. He would lend his voice to many characters throughout the Spider-Man video games and cartoons, sometimes even to play himself, and later on his wife, Joanne Lee, would do the same. Of course, we can't think about Stan Lee without thinking about his famous cameos in Marvel-related movies. To many, these were over-the-top obnoxious interruptions that took away from the movie, but to others they were fun standout moments that became a little game to see who could notice the cameo first. I know that many, if not all, of the future Marvel movies that have been announced have already had their Lee cameos filmed, but it will be sad when the day comes that these will stop. Stan Lee, you did an amazing, incredible, fantastic work throughout your life. Sure, you may have been a little difficult to work with at times, and in no way was all of this success your own, but I'd be lying if I stood here and said that your work didn't impact my life. I mean, look at me. I'm on camera talking about comic books, all because I grew up loving Spider-Man. Without you, I absolutely would not be standing here doing this today. So thank you, Stan Lee. And thank you as well to Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and so many others that have created these stories that we all love. One thing I hate about entertainment, if it's music, movies, books, or anything, is that society waits until after death to show their true appreciation for the people that make it all. I'm glad you love Stan Lee, but maybe a tweet with his name as a hashtag and a crying emoji wasn't the best place for you to post his name for the first time in your life. If you are a fan of something and you love somebody's work, let them know now. I want to take this moment to thank some of my favorite comic book authors and artists, and maybe you can do the same on social media. Thank you Brian Michael Bendis for your tear-jerking, thought-provoking, and laughter-filled stories that you make. You will always be a hero of mine. And thank you to Jeff Lemire for your life-changing work on the all-new, all-different Moon Knight series. You showed me how intense, dark, and mature comic books could really be. That will forever be one of my favorite comic series. Also, thank you to Greg Smallwood for your art in the series, something that I'm always quick to share with others. Again, please don't be afraid to share your appreciation for artists and writers right now. Don't wait until it's too late for them to see. And with that, it's time for Comic Therapy to come to an end with another Guess That Mask. Last episode, I showed you this image of Jane Frost, Thor's longtime love interest who took the role of God of Thunder in Jason Aaron's new Thor series. Look at that, we finally got to a female character. It really is harder than you'd think. Anyways, here's your next image for Guess That Mask. If you know me, then you know that this is another favorite of mine, although not from any others. If you know who it is, want to take a guess, or just want to talk about comic books with me, tweet me at ZTV Goofing Off using that hashtag Comic Therapy. My name's Clayton Schrock, and in the words of Stan Lee, Excelsior.